You found yourself on another episode of Locked On Bulls. On today's episode, we're going to talk about the update to Lonzo Ball, who apparently has been cleared for the next step of his rehab. It's a pretty big step, but we're going to talk about why it's not necessarily what some Bulls fans think that it does mean. We're also going to get into my biggest concerns for the Chicago Bulls heading into the remainder of the last 18 games of the season and ask, can the Chicago Bulls get a win at home today against the Dallas Mavericks? We're going to talk about all that and more on today's Locked On Bulls.
You are Locked On Bulls, your daily podcast on the Chicago Bulls, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for tuning in to Locked On Bulls, member of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every single day. My name is Haize, host and creator of Chicago Bulls and Chicago Bears Central YouTube pages and podcasts. And Pat the Designer is out today. He is taking care of business at Hallis Hall, surprisingly enough. So make sure you guys give some love and support out to Pat the Designer. We'll be back tonight after the game to break down everything that went on there. But with that said, let's go ahead and get into the topics today. Well, before we get into the topics, I do have to let you guys know today's episode is brought to you by Nissan. Are you the kind of driver that likes to push things a little further? Ever wonder what adventure could be right around the corner? Take the Nissan Rogue, Nissan Pathfinder, or Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure. Check them all out today at nissanusa.com. Now, with that being said, let's go ahead and jump into the content. And so Lonzo Ball was cleared for what was called advanced rehab. And this was actually misquoted by a page out on Twitter, which Casey Johnson had to go in and kind of correct and let everybody know what was actually said. And so what this means is that Lonzo Ball is experiencing no pain, which is something that we heard from Billy Donovan over the weekend, but then they kind of updated this yesterday that not only is he not feeling no pain, he's moving into the next stage, which is still going to be controlled workouts. This is not him returning to full contact. This does not mean he's cleared to play basketball, anything like that competitively. It just means that he's moving into the next stage of his rehab, which is going to kind of be the controlled situation, meaning you're going to have people, trainers out there with pads to kind of simulate some type of actual physical contact, meaning he's probably going to try to drive to the basket. They'll have that pad up on him, kind of see how he responds, how that knee responds to it. And then, they'll see what the next step of rehab is after that. Now, this is still a major step, right? While it's not him being cleared for basketball activities, as it was misquoted initially when it came down, it is the next major step in him possibly being returning from injury. Keep in mind, he will be the first basketball player to return from a cartilage replacement surgery in the history of the NBA. And so while like ACL surgeries used to be looked at as career ending and they're not anymore, this will still be groundbreaking for that. He would be the first one to return to that. And I want everybody to really kind of temper those expectations, right? If he is cleared to start of the season, that does not mean that he's going to jump right back in. He's not going to be Lonzo immediately. To be out of basketball for 2.5 years, it'll be 2 years and 9 months that he's been out of basketball if he's able to play opening day for the Chicago Bulls next year. So it's going to take some time if he even is cleared. But for right now, he's making progress. And so for so long with Lonzo Ball, for those who have really followed the Bulls and followed it, he's kind of ramped up, felt some real bad pain, and they've had to ramp him back down. Now, for the first time really since, that initial injury and that initial time period where he was supposed to be out, 4 to 6 weeks, this is the first time where he's not experiencing the same level of pain. Still some discomfort, but not the same level of pain to where it's unbearable for him not to get back out there on the basketball court. So it's a nice step. It's the proper step. It's what you want to see from him at this point in time, because I tell you what, if there was yet another setback, then it would have all but been doom and gloom. It's still not all sunshine and rainbows to say that either. It's gonna still be a long process over the offseason before Lonzo Ball is cleared. Now, with him making this next step in the progress, it's naturally led people to ask, okay, what does this potentially mean for the Chicago Bulls this offseason, right? And I want to answer that a couple of different ways. First, it's that if Lonzo is cleared, let's just look at the positive side of it. If Lonzo Ball is cleared to play basketball by training camp, he's there, he's ready to go. He's going to be on a heavy minutes restriction. He's probably not going to play back-to-backs. And he only has 1 year left on his contract, which is next season. So the expectation that Lonzo is going to come back and be able to make an impact, it's still some questions there, right? He's going to come back. Even I would say this: the most optimistic outlook on Lonzo Ball coming back next season is probably playing 50 to 60 games. That's probably the biggest outlook, with taking away back-to-backs, the minutes restrictions, and just some scheduled days in there for discomfort and healing. It's probably 50 to 60 games you can expect him to come back in. Now, if he's able to come back on the court, what can we expect from him on the court, though? Lonzo Ball's always been a high IQ basketball player. That's one of the things that have made Lonzo Ball, or made him, such a big impact for the Bulls in the 30 or so games he played for the Bulls, right? And that three-point shooting has been legit for Lonzo Ball. And so if he's able to come back and shoot the ball anywhere near that 40% that he shot the ball from before he went down, that's a big step for the Chicago Bulls. That's a big thing for him. There's still a team that needs three-point shooting. We need that drastically. And here's what I'll say. 65% of Lonzo Ball is still probably better than Javon Carter. So you it's not that he can't come in and help the Bulls, but he's not going to come in. He's not going to be the starter next to Kobe White. I've seen some people say, oh, what would a backcourt of him and Kobe White look like? You're not going to see that at a high level, right? You're not going to get right back to having him and Zach out there. So the Bulls didn't have to ask the question, and this is still a valid question, of if he's not cleared, do you still file for the career-ending injury exception, which we've heard that there's more openness to do. There was even openness to move his deal at this trade deadline. They just didn't find in the right trade. They didn't find it. So that's where it gets more difficult at, because even if Lonzo was on pace to be cleared at some point next season, the Bulls can still get the career-ending injury exception. It's just that if he does eventually make a comeback for another team, if he plays over a certain amount of games, I believe it's 35 games. Somebody correct me on that if I'm wrong. And if he's able to play over 35 games, then the Bulls have to pay that back. They'll still, at that point, if they've already used the money that they've gained from the career-ending injury exception, they're not going to take those contracts away. It's just the Bulls would have to pay that money out. But keep in mind, because there's only 1 year left on his contract, it still does not go to the luxury tax next season. So there's that benefit to it as well. So everything's not in the clear, and the Bulls still have tons of options ahead of them. And I really think that they'll have to weigh that. If he's cleared and ready to go, I would say by the draft, okay. Yeah, you at that point, maybe you take a look at keeping him. If he's not cleared by the draft, my thought process has always been you have to consider filing for that career-ending injury exception if he's not ready to go by around the time of the NBA draft, because at that point, you want to make sure that you file it. It can take up to 30 days to get approved. I think the longest it's ever taken is 45 days. So you want to leave yourself enough time so that you can actually use that money in free agency. Now, all cap space is not used in free agency. I know I've seen a lot of people say, well, if you do remove it, who are you going to sign to replace him? It's not about just signing people. Yeah, next year's slated to be kind of weaker free agent class. You can absorb some contracts if you're not signing a free agent outright. So it leaves more options open for the Bulls. And for an offseason where they're right up against that luxury tax, they are looking to re-sign Patrick Williams. They're still considering re-signing DeMar DeRozan, even though I have my feelings on that. And you still have Andre Drummond. If all things stay the same, there's a chance you're not able to bring 2 out of those 3 players back. So that's something that the Bulls front office is going to have to heavily weigh in all of these decisions. But for what it's worth, like I said, Lonzo Ball making the right proper steps in his recovery, which is what you want to see. He's making those steps. He's getting, healthier, and we'll end up seeing if he finally reaches that spot of being able to be cleared. And if he is cleared, at that point, we'll worry about what he's able to bring on the basketball court. Basketball IQ things, it's just, is his body going to be able to support it, right? Is he going to suffer another injury? How many games is he going to play? What is that restriction really going to look like as far as the minutes on that? Those are the questions that are ahead of Lonzo Ball, even if he is cleared. But we'll see, man. We'll see. But overall, like I said, very positive. This is the most positive set of updates that we've gotten for Lonzo. Heck, me and Pat talked about on the Saturday episode that Lonzo Ball, we had just got the update that he was actually running and cutting with no pain for the first time. For him to then take just a day later, take the next step in that rehab, that's really important for Lonzo. And I'm glad to see that he's making that recovery. And I'm sure that mentally, the human aspect of all this, it got to be mentally taxing for everything that he's been through over the last 2 years. You finally go to a team in the Chicago Bulls that he said he felt like it was the perfect team around him for him to succeed and thrive in. That's taken away from you. You try to ramp up, you deal with that mentally. It's at one point we got that video from Lonzo of him talking about how hard it was for him to just make it up the steps. So it's good that Lonzo was making the proper steps in the right area. And let's hope that continues for Lonzo Ball. But next up, though, we're going to talk about the Bulls team that's still out on the court. We're going to talk about some of my biggest concerns for this Bulls team over the final 18 games of the season. Before we talk about that, though, we got to talk to you guys about one of our sponsors, and that is Nissan. Are you the kind of driver that likes to push things a little further? Ever wonder what adventure could be around the next corner? Our friends at Nissan have a lineup of SUVs with the capabilities to take your adventure to the next level. The 2024 Nissan Rogue is the perfect for city drives and great escapes. Class exclusive, Google built-in, your always updating assistant to call on almost anything. Gone are the days of connecting to your phone. Google Assistant, Google Maps, and Google Play Store are built right into the 12.3-inch high-definition touchscreen infotainment system. The 2024 Rogue is the perfect mid-size crossover for your next adventure. The 2024 Nissan Pathfinder has room up to 8 and expansive cargo capacity and advanced available 4x4 capability. With a 284 horsepower and up to 6,000 pounds towing, when your adventure calls, the Pathfinder is there to answer. Take the Nissan Rogue, Nissan Pathfinder, or Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure. Shop NissanUSA.com. All right, so with the positive stuff kind of not out the way, because that makes it seem like it's bad. Like I want to say my concerns with the team, but you know, the Chicago Bulls have come out of this road trip in the recent play, and I think it's kind of reinvigorated a lot of the Bulls fans that were kind of more down on this team, right? Me and Pat have talked about it, like literally right before the 3-game winning streak. There's just so much negativity on Bulls, like social media and forums and things like that. And while that's a small portion of the Bulls community, it's still there, right? There's the Bulls fans that felt that way. And there are a lot of people who kind of, with their play over the last 4 games, yeah, they had a fourth quarter collapse against the Clippers, but there are a lot of people who did not expect the Bulls to be able to go 3-1 over their last road trip, and they came out of that with a really good record. But as this Bulls team gears up to go into the play-in tournament, to go into postseason over the last 18 games, there's still some pretty big concerns about how successful they're going to be able to do that. Now, for the Bulls' credit, they have the 8th easiest schedule in the NBA from March 14th all the way to the end, which is April 14th, around that time period. The Bulls have one of the easiest schedules in the NBA. And so that goes well for the Bulls, but there's still some concerns, right? I think we talk about positive. We talked about Kobe. We've talked about Io. DeMar DeRozan has been able to really adapt for the most part pretty well, being back to the king of the fourth. Heck, me and Pat even talked about how Nikola Vucevic has played much better over the last few games, Clippers game aside to that one. But there's still some major concerns for this team. And one of those major concerns is Kobe going to keep it up, right? We know that Kobe was on that slide, which lasted about 5 to 6 games, came out of that. He's been playing much better here lately. The Clippers game, again, that game, kind of everything went left that game. He still played overall solid. But the minutes that Kobe White's played, Kobe White went from last season averaging less than 23 minutes per game, scoring 9 points per game, starting only 2 games, to he started every single game for the Chicago Bulls. He hasn't missed a game this season yet. He started every game. He's leading the NBA in minutes played. And the Chicago Bulls, because of their inability to hold on to a lead, continue putting themselves in overtime and clutch scenarios, which add more minutes to Kobe White and DeMar DeRozan for that matter. So I won't lie and say that there is a concern if that slide for Kobe White, if that consistency stays there for Kobe White. I have no doubt that who he is now is legit, right? The player that we've seen. But I'd be remiss not to acknowledge that there has still been some of those inconsistencies, albeit much less than any other point of his career. But is he going to hit that wall again? He seems like he's come through it on the other side well. But because of the Bulls' bench production is so bad, right, that Kobe and DeMar have to play a lot of minutes. So I am concerned about the minutes that DeMar and Kobe are playing. And Kobe more so than DeMar, as far as like Kobe allowing it to affect his consistency, just because this is the first year he's making this type of an impact and is this important to the team winning, right? Always played solidly, even coming off the bench. But he is, in a lot of ways, at a lot of times, the engine that keeps the Chicago Bulls going. And I throw Io in there for a little bit as well. Like having players that are hitting their growth, making steps and leaps in one season and having to be relied on so much. There is that little bit, especially when you get into the play-in, are you going to be able to stay consistent in that? And I would hate for Coby White's season to end with another slide, right? Even if a couple of game one happens in there, that's fine. But overall, staying consistent for Coby is something that I am a little bit concerned about if he's going to be able to do that. I think he's going to, even if he does have a slide, he's going to be able to work his way out of it. But Kobe's just become so important for the Bulls, so important to the spacing of the Bulls, and not just his scoring, it's his passing too, right? And so as defenses gear in and focus more towards Coby White and stopping Coby, because that's what teams are doing now. They are focused on stopping Coby White. I'm worried about on the back half of the season and going into a play-in scenario where a team is just game planning for you. Is that going to affect Coby White a little bit more as we continue to go on and the further and further we get in that play-in or whatever it happens? So that's one of the concerns. But a much bigger concern than Coby White is the bench production for the Chicago Bulls. Our bench is atrocious. And I know why, right? You got Caruso, you got Ayo. Those are two players that were meant to be coming off your bench that are in the starting lineup now. And to their credit, they're averaging double-digit points per game. I think Alex Caruso maybe is a little bit under 9 points per game at this point. But they're averaging huge output for your team. Like you can't deny the effect that Ayo and Caruso are having, especially on the defensive side of the ball for the Chicago Bulls. And so them being the two-way players for the Bulls, it definitely has affected the Chicago Bulls bench because at this point now you're relying on Javon Carter, you're relying on Andre Drummond. Even though Arnold Lop has definitely made some shots for the Bulls, he's a rookie. Julian Phillips, a rookie. Dalen Terry, a rookie. Terry Taylor isn't good. So the bench becomes a little bit more important. Not that you want to go 4 and 5 deep on your bench. Lineups kind of constrict in the postseason anyway. But even if the Bulls were to go only 7 deep in the roster, 8 deep on the roster, there's just a dramatic fall off in performance. Javon Carter has not been consistent for the Bulls. Now with Torrey Craig coming back, having him get time to ramp up, things like that, maybe that improves itself, right? Maybe Torrey Craig moves back into the starting lineup once he's off the minutes restriction and Ayo or Caruso move back to the bench, or you just keep bringing Torrey Craig off the bench himself. Either way, Torrey's going to be solid as long as he stays healthy. Speaking of, Torrey Craig avoided another injury this weekend. I don't know if you guys saw that. And in practice yesterday, he avoided an injury, or in working out. But that's the bench is something that I'm really concerned about with the Chicago Bulls team, just because of how much we're going to need to rely on it. And it's going to be hard. And then another thing is the Bulls being in so many clutch situations. The Bulls' inability to hold on to a lead is one of the most confounding things about this team all season long. Just because we play so different. We are the best clutch team in the NBA. The best clutch team in the NBA. And so for us to continually put ourselves in situations like that, you can't deny that in a play-in scenario, or as you're playing playoff type atmosphere type games, it's a little bit concerning, right? We already know Billy Donovan has his limitations of being a coach and making adjustments and things like that. So when you can't hold on to leads, when you get double-digit leads and you lose them almost every single time, that's a bit concerning as a fan rooting for a team here to the back half of the season. Now, like I said, I think with more solid bench shooting with Torrey Craig, if Arnold Lop keeps progressing, I think at some point Billy Donovan has to recognize too, you got to trust the rookie and Julian Phillips. These are things that I think you can find Band-Aids for this season. I don't think you can totally fix them this season. I don't think you're going to be able to fix them totally until the offseason, where you can kind of change that mix of the roster a little bit. But there are some things that you can do to kind of circumvent or put a Band-Aid on some of the flaws that you have here. The Bulls are the worst bench scoring team in the NBA. We averaged the least amount of bench points per game, and we scored the least amount of bench points overall. We have one of the worst differentials at -29 with our bench production. So that bench is definitely one of the big things for the Chicago Bulls. It's one of the big things for the Bulls that could hurt them as this season goes on. Not saying for sure, not saying that maybe Javon, who over the last 4 games has had 3 solid games playing really well for the Bulls, maybe he's starting to discover some things. But to me, when you're this far into the season, once somebody kind of shows you who and what they are for your team, they kind of stay that way. But hey, maybe the Bulls can get some surprise. Maybe with the added importance of the Bulls games, with Atlanta Hawks, who are 2 games below the Bulls, they lost yesterday. They also lost Sadiq Bey for the remainder of the season, on top of losing Trae Young for most of the remainder of the season. Maybe that helps the Bulls create a little bit more padding there, but there's definitely some concerns on those things for the Chicago Bulls. So just to recap, another slide coming from Kobe, the minutes from DeMar and Kobe overall, worried about the bench production, and then worried about the Bulls' inability to hold on to leads over the remaining games of the season. But we'll see how the Bulls perform in that. Hopefully my concern proves to not be that big of a deal and the Bulls take care of business. But in talking about taking care of business, next up, we're going to talk about and ask the question, can the Chicago Bulls take care of business against the Dallas Mavericks tonight? But before we get into that, I got to talk to you guys about another one of our sponsors, and that's LinkedIn. When you're hiring for small businesses, you want to find the quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. LinkedIn has a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. It gives you access to the professionals you can find anywhere else. LinkedIn does all that while making the process easy and intuitive. Hiring is easy when you have that many qualified candidates. So easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. LinkedIn knows small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have the time or resources to hire. LinkedIn is constantly finding ways to make the process easier. They even just launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process even easier and quicker. 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, Bulls fans. Appreciate you guys for sticking through with me, man. Shout out to Pat the designer who's out taking care of business. But let's get into the last topic for today. The Bulls take on the Dallas Mavericks back at home after a 4-game winning streak. They haven't played at home in the UC for over a week. Can the Bulls get a win against the Dallas Mavericks tonight? And there's a couple of things why. I know the Dallas Mavericks are a better team. They have Luka Doncic, they have Kyrie Irving. They're coached solidly, right, by Jason Kidd. Not a great coach, but solid. But I look at the Dallas Mavericks, and that's a team that has the 8th best or 10th best offense in the NBA. They average 119 points per game, and they score. They can outright score. They pass the ball. They don't average a lot of turnovers. Under 12 turnovers per game do the Dallas Mavericks average. This is a team that offensively is extremely, extremely solid. They're sound. Once they're rocking and rolling, they can go. And even when the offense doesn't look the best, you got Luka Doncic that you can bet on, right? And there's nobody that can stop Luka. But there are also some concerns with that team. They are one of the worst defensive teams in the entire NBA, period. They don't rebound the ball well. They're the 26th best rebounding team in the league. One of the things that the Bulls are really solid at. This is a team that I truly think that the Bulls, if they come in with the right game plan, can definitely pull out a win. And many people may look at that as an upset. But the Bulls have to be sound defensively. You cannot ignore the defensive side of the ball. You have to. Now, the Mavs are so bad defensively themselves. While they average 119 points per game, they give up 118 points per game. They only average a little bit over a point more than what they give up. So if the Bulls can play efficient, not turn the ball over, rebound the ball really well, the Bulls can get in this game with the Dallas Mavericks. But if they don't, and if they do not defend the three-point line, it can get ugly for the Chicago Bulls. The Dallas Mavericks shoot the three ball efficiently. Over 40% is the team. They're the second best three-point shooting team in the entire NBA. And that is one of the biggest things with the Chicago Bulls is that even when they play sound defense, sometimes it's just a math problem. If you allow a team to shoot too many threes and you can't make them themselves, we've seen the Bulls at times be outscored just at the three-point line by 30 points. They only go on to lose the game by 8 points, but they got outscored by 30 points at the three-point line. This is where the Bulls defense needs to be extremely, extremely crisp. You have to close out on the three-point line and make it difficult for their perimeter shooters. Then you can attack the paint. While they've traded for Daniel Gafford, they got Derek Lively there. They got some size there. This is a team that is susceptible to giving up points in the paint, mainly because of how bad they are rebounding-wise. They allow the 5th most rebounds in the NBA by opposing teams. The Bulls have to take care of business tonight. That's just what it is. And so this is an important game. The Atlanta Hawks, which were 1.5 games back before losing last night to the I don't know who they lost to. They lost last night. You want to take care of business. This is the opportunity for the Bulls to keep creating more space between them and the Atlanta Hawks. And you have to take care of the ball. Don't allow for a lot of turnovers, rebound the ball well, shoot the ball effectively, and show that brand of defense that we've seen in bits and pieces from the Chicago Bulls. If you do those things, you can be in this game. I haven't predicted wins and losses for the Chicago Bulls for 2.5 years. I just don't do that. I talk about the things that the Bulls can do to put themselves in a position to win, and there are more than enough opportunities against this Mavericks team where the Bulls can be in an opportunity to win this game. They have to take care of business. That's it. That's what it boils down to. And if the Bulls come in here with that game plan, the coaching staff has them ready, this can be an interesting game for the Chicago Bulls. Let the energy of the United crowd. I'm sure that the fans in the UC are going to be booming today because of the team coming back, riding a 3-4 streak. You gotta be able to reward that. You gotta build off that. So let's see, man. It's gonna be tough. And Luka is gonna try to go off on you. And Alex Caruso is probably gonna guard that Luka Doncic matchup. We'll see how Alex Caruso can do. I think a combination between Caruso, Io, probably a little Torrey Craig on him as well. They're gonna try to get in that hip pocket of Luka Doncic, but even if you can't stop or slow down Luka, you can still win the game by making sure you take care of business in the other spots of it. So we'll see, man. We'll see. The rebounding is the biggest thing today. We have to rebound as a team. This is one of those games I would not be surprised to see both Vooch and Andre Drummond both get double-doubles tonight, but we have to rebound as a team. We can't just rely on our bigs to rebound the ball. We have to do it as a team tonight against the Dallas Mavericks. And let's hope that we can, man. But all right, y'all, that is the time for today. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to another episode of Locked On Bulls. Make sure you guys are following the show at Locked On Bulls on every social media platform. You can follow me at CEO Haize. Locked On Bulls is free and available on every podcasting app and platform of your choice, as well as YouTube. For Pat the Designer, even though he's not here, I'm Haize. This has been Locked On Bulls, and we'll see you guys tonight after the game. Peace, y'all.